Being a head coach, I would say, is a lot more lonely than you would think. It's not like a personal pain that happened to you. It's the pain because you felt like you let so many others down. I think the best coaches, especially in the competition, you don't say a lot. Like, man, this is a small cue, a small thing. Like, this ain't the time for a long lecture. I think you have to get the corrections and the accountability. You don't have to do it in a negative and hard way to like cuss somebody out or, make them feel less than, but you do have to get it corrected. And if you do that, you got high standards and I don't let them slip. That meant something to me to say, yeah, you got your ass kicked, you're on the canvas, but you got back up, figured out how to get back going again. And that was a good reminder to me, man. Like, it's always about the fight that you can put in.
First of all, this is my voice. I'm Tim Green, and I have ALS. But this podcast isn't about ALS. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for me. I'm a father of 5, married for over 35 years, a New York Times best-selling author, an NFL first-round pick, and a practicing attorney. This is Nothing Left Unsaid, where my son Troy and I sit down with extraordinary people for raw, honest conversations about life, its toughest trials, and greatest triumphs. My voice in today's episode is powered by 11 Labs. Coach Dan Quinn, you've become the savior of the Washington Commanders, a franchise that struggled since the early 90s, back when I was still playing in the NFL, facing Washington in the playoffs, and you were still a defensive lineman at Salisbury State. You turned Washington around in just your first season, after your success for other organizations like leading the Falcons to the Super Bowl, winning the championship in Seattle, and reinventing the Cowboys' defense. I'm honored to share the mic with maybe the only other defensive lineman and English major in the league. Dare I say ever. Welcome to Nothing Left Unsaid, and thank you for being here.
Man, I am so honestly honored to be on with you. And so I've got a tattoo of 99 on my shoulder. So that is near and dear to me too, bro. So I am, man, I'm pumped to be here with you and talk through everything, man. It's that time where football is rocking. We're 3 days in with the players, and the things that I love most about training camp have everything to do with the connection with the guys, man. Like, that's the best part of it, seeing them doing their thing together, working hard. So we're having a lot of fun.
Coach, speaking of our common major, I know we've read a lot of the same books, but have you ever thought about writing your own one day?
I have thought about that, and I do because I'm like you, man. I love to read. I've This is the first year I've kept track of like each book that I'm reading. My wife does that, and so she's usually up in the 50s or higher, and so during the summer, during the off season. So yeah, I like reading some of them on performance, and a lot of it from our mindset. I take some that I use with the team about what that means, what we could do together. But yeah, I do want to write one day, and I need a lot of advice. So I'm coming down to Boca, and I'll be sitting right next to you, and give me every insight that it takes.
Do you guys, will you read a book? You mentioned like reading for with the team. Will you tell the team, like the coaching staff, whatever, to all read the same book?
I have at times, like years ago, there was a really cool one about the All Blacks out of New Zealand called Legacy, and I liked the book. So if there's ones that I like, I'll definitely, buy 20 of them and then hand them out, and then, have a discussion about them. This chapter meant something to me, this part. Or if I am reading, I'll take my phone and screenshot it and then just send it on to a group text. Hey, this spoke to me. This is something that I do. So then I can share that information with the other guys. I can remember Tim's book, like double reverses and stuff. Like, yeah, we have all that going on our football side of things. So we're ready to go, man. I would like to write one day though.
When you're ready to write, give me a call. All right, brother. Before we get into it, give us the elevator pitch. How did Dan Quinn, the kid from Morristown, New Jersey, become Coach DQ?
Oh man, I grew up wanting to be a teacher and a coach. Man, I loved it. Like youth coaches, high school coaches. I did football and track and field. So then when I got to college, I was kind of going to go to school to get my education degree to go back to teach. I thought maybe I'd teach elementary school and then coach high school ball. And I got to college, and as I was there, I was like, man, I'd love to do this full time. And so at the end, when I graduated college, I had an opportunity to be a volunteer for a year at William and Mary in Williamsburg. And I remember calling my parents and saying I had a GA job at a school called Kutztown in Pennsylvania. And I told my dad, I said, hey, I'd like to go to William and Mary, and I'm not taking any classes and I don't get paid. He goes, so let me get this straight. Like, you're going there, no school and no money. I just wanted you to say that out loud. I said, yeah, that's right, Dad. So can I be on scholarship one more year? And he said, yeah, that's what you want to do. So I did that, Tim, in 1994. I graduated in 1994, and that's when I started coaching. But yeah, I needed that 1 year extra of scholarship from my parents, and that's how it all began. But I knew I wanted to coach because I love to teach. And I think almost any time you can put coach, you could probably put in the word teacher. Like, so much of it is the same, man, of teaching, of pushing, of finding the right things, working your skills. So that's what I love. Probably I like the connection of everybody, but the teaching part I like a lot.
Was there a teacher or a coach that you had that made you feel that way, or you just always had that in you?
I think all of them, man, like high school coaches, and then into college, same thing. So I was always watching it. I loved, like watching the other people coach too. I remember going in college and, watching the basketball guys. Even like when I was coaching at colleges, I'd like to go and watch other guys coach. I thought that was awesome. I coached at Hofstra University in Long Island. And the time I was there, the basketball coach was Jay Wright, who was the great Villanova basketball coach. So I was like, this guy can coach, man. I remember like watching practices there, watching games. So it wasn't even just in football. It was in anything. And so I like teaching, the motivation part of it. So I desperately, wish I could have played further than college, but that was clear. That was where it was going to end. So I thought, man, this has got to be the next best thing.
And when you would go watch those coaches, was it entertainment, or would you try to take a piece, kind of like, would you try to educate yourself and try to become more like that coach?
I'd try to come more like that coach. I want to be down close. What was he saying in a timeout? How did he communicate with the player while they were on the floor? And those were things that I could see. Like we had a great baseball coach when I was in high school, and I didn't coach, but I'd want to hear what he was saying from the dugout. What was the one or two things that happens quick that you can say? I think the best coaches, especially in the competition, you don't say a lot. Like, man, this is a small cue, a small thing. Like, this ain't the time for a long lecture. Like, this specific thing, whether it was footwork or hand placement or this, like something, a fast cue that can allow them to do the thing. And so I think in competition, that's where like the best of the best. And this is what this player needs at this moment. And I just enjoyed seeing that from people that I didn't know, but I wanted to watch them anyway.
The coaching lifestyle is only sexy when you make it to the head job. Is there a personal relationship that suffered because you were chasing this dream? And if they're listening now, what would you say to them?
Yeah, it's a fine line, isn't it? Like when you're really going after something, there's sacrifices that go with that. And so I definitely went too far onto that. But I would say that the best part of me in coaching was my wife, Stacy, like having the understanding and the support and to be able to do that. Because when you're married to a coach, you better be pretty independent and handle things, on your own, because if you're waiting around for the coach who's coming back, late and not available all the time, that ain't going to work. If you really make sure that it's still about the people, Tim, and I don't ever want to forget that. So the people that are your crew, your people, you find your time, man. If I got to block off 30 minutes on a Tuesday to make some calls, to check in with people, you find that time, like who are your people, man, no matter what they call, you pick up. I wanted to make sure I stayed true to that because there was definitely times I was always thinking about what was next, and I probably missed some present time moments of enjoyment of doing things because I was a defensive line coach. Man, I wanted to be a coordinator. I was always kind of like, what's next? What's next? And that would be if I could go back to my younger self and say, and avoid the comparison to others. Well, this guy made it to this spot because at 30, he became a coordinator. Like, run your own race, man, and do your own thing. It's not all the same. And I think, what's the saying? Like, comparison can be the thief of joy. That happened to me sometimes. Like, why'd they name this guy as the coordinator? Why didn't I get that look? And that would be my message to my younger self, man. Like, absolutely find your own superpower and let it rip, because I definitely missed it on sometimes, man, where I was wanting what was next, and some relationships probably struggled because of that.
Coach Quinn, have you ever heard that quote by Conor McGregor? I know it's not football, but where he talks about losing his mind, but it'll all be worth it when he's got the gold belt around his waist. You ever heard that quote?
I have, and I don't agree with him.
You don't?
No, because like, you want to do it so badly, but there's also like all these people that are on this trip with you, and you put all the walls up and lose everybody around you, you could win that belt and not have the opportunity to celebrate it with everybody else.
It's true.
Not the same, man. So like, one of the things that connect teams that win championships is like, because they had to go through all the journey to get there. Like, why do you see people like crying at the end of a championship? It's not from that game. It's from like all the stuff that you had to do it together. So I feel like missing out on like all of it together, like, man, that would suck. And so I like being right on the edge of these games, and it's kind of the fun part of the NFL. I love playing and coaching against the best, but it's the games, man. That's where like the joy is. Sometimes you win them, or you don't win, and then you go back and figure it out. But being in the moment of the competition, like, that's why I do it. And like, the NFL is fun for me because like, this is the best in the profession. Like, this is the best it can get. And so when you can do it at that level, like, man, it's cool as hell.
DQ, I know you still have a lot of your coaching story to write, but would you mind giving us the one or two highlights from each of the Falcons, Cowboys, and Commanders jobs? Maybe a specific moment that stands out to you?
Yeah, for sure. For the Falcons, this is going to sound unusual. One of my proudest ones, we had lost the Super Bowl in 2016. And that's a hard one. You see teams the next year just devastated, so you're coming back. So the team came back and got into the playoffs, and we won our first wild card game at the Rams. And so it was playing in the Coliseum. And so to know that, all right, 11 months ago or 11 and a half months ago, on the mat, knocked out, got your ass kicked, but knowing that, like, man, you get back up and you fight and you put a plan together and you go. So like, that meant something to me to say, yeah, you got your ass kicked, you're on the canvas, but you got back up, you figured out how to get back going again. And that was a good reminder to me, man. Like, it's always about the fight that you can put in. So it wasn't as meaningful to other fans or other people, but it was to me, because I wanted to say, just because you got your ass knocked down doesn't mean you're knocked out. And that was a big lesson for me. Going to Dallas, I really recaptured the joy. Like, leaving, when you get let go, man, you're upset, a lot of emotions that go with that. And so going there, that was my number one thing, man, like, recapture all the joy of the coaching, of what that looks like and how we do it. And then, had a postseason win in Tampa. And so that was a big deal, for the Cowboys. And for me also to know, okay, I found joy in this spot. If I don't become a head coach again, man, I'm okay with that. I'm not chasing the next thing. I'd like to, but it wasn't like I was going into that spot of what's next anymore. If I had done that for the next 25 years, I'd have a blast doing it. And then here in Washington, I've got to say, we had a Hail Mary throw against the Chicago Bears, dude. And I've been on the field for when tried some of them, but from high school ball, college ball, pro ball, that is the first time I have been on the side where the person like comes down with the catch. I felt like I was running around like Jim Valvano when NC State won the championship. Like I think I just blacked out. I don't know what happened or what took place for the next 30 seconds, but I can remember like just absolute like utter like can you believe that, man? Like lots of hugs and wild time. So three different memories, but like all of them uh, involve like some type of cool moment together as a team. The Atlanta one of like fighting back, the Dallas one of like going on the road and winning a playoff game, and then the one in Washington. Um, just because it's something I'd never done before. Like I've had a field goal or that kind of thing, but that was wild, dude.
Coach, why do you think like the Super Bowl slump, that's like a big thing in the NFL, the team that loses typically, flames out? Is it just the emotional pain carries over, or is it like what do you think it is? The confidence?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's confidence, but there is an emotional, part of that you want to brush it away and say, okay, that was, like it didn't happen. But there is an element of like the emotional part that like it's hard and took a piece out of you. So like it definitely tests your resilience. And if you can really turn that into, hey, it happened, and now we move on. This is a new season, a new one. So many externally will keep referring back to that. And I think what I've learned as a coach is as long as you have standards, and we have one here at the Commanders, you don't have to rely on outside narratives. Like that comes from the outside. If you have standards, this is how we play, this is how we do things, that comes from the inside. And I think the best teams have really high standards. Hey, this is how they get down, this is how they play, these are the standards they want to uphold to. And if you have standards, you're not maybe relying on the external voices, narratives that say they lost, they did this, can they make it back? Because that's a lot of the talking heads that talk about it, and that's a good deal. But I never wanted somebody in a suit and a necktie to tell us how we should think. I wanted, hey, this is how we get down our own team and the own locker room.
And then the last follow-up thing on that, kind of your highlights is what brought the joy back in Dallas? Like, was there a moment that you're like, "Oh, this is fun again," or was it just maybe not being in that head coaching role that you had, I don't know, less pressure or less to worry about, or what brought it back?
I I felt like I really got to get teaching again, like right off the bat. And sometimes as a head coach, you don't get as much in the trenches because your first job is coaching the coaches. And if it gets from the coaches down, philosophy, standard, the practice. And so I wanted to make sure I was, down with the defensive line every day, coaching them. And that helped Troy because I was like right in the fight doing the techniques and the drills. And as a coach, the feeling of seeing others get better, like it's the best, man. And so that's what like coaching is. It's not about any credit for that. It's about like seeing people get better and finding whatever they can do. Can they do that? And that's what recaptured the joy for me. And like so, helping. We had a good linebacker who was drafted in the first round, and Micah Parsons. So to help him develop, and like I love that. Here's this 20-year-old that played limited at Penn State, had all this talent. Like, man, we're gonna get it out of you, and like this is gonna be a blast doing it together. So like moments like that, that's as a coach, that's really cool.
This podcast is called Nothing Left Unsaid for a reason. I want to ask about the tough part of coaching that the public doesn't always see. I have to ask about the infamous Super Bowl loss with the Falcons. When you lose a game like that, where do you put that pain? And what have you done with it since?
It's a great question, Tim, because it's not like a personal pain that happened to you. It's the pain because you felt like you let so many others down. And so it wasn't like a one-on-one, okay, I'm responsible for that, I can take it. But like knowing that so many other people had this loss and that pain, that's the hardest part. Like you so want to deliver for ownership that hired you, for the team that believes in you, for your families and for the coaches and for the players, because I had known firsthand what that feeling is like to win it, and I wanted to be able to share that with them. I was fortunate, like 3 out of 4 years, I coached in the Super Bowl, like 14 or 13, 14, and 16. So you think, oh, this is going good, man. Like you'll get other chances here, and you want to make sure. And what you come to find out, it's really hard, man. It's really hard to get to that spot and get to that space. So the pain of getting there, I wanted to make sure what were the lessons I could take from it. So when I'm in that space again, I want to make sure if there was a lesson to learn that I could apply it. Otherwise, the pain of the loss, wasn't for anything other than just a loss. So that's how I approached it. You don't really get to prove it until you're into that spot again. It's comparing a Super Bowl loss to a regular season loss or a playoff loss, not quite the same. But I do know, and I've come to understand, it's also, man, the life of a competitor. And I would much, much rather, I don't know how to say this, have loved and then lost than never loved at all. I would take my chance to go into that fight any day, to be in that spot. So that's kind of how I looked at it, to say, I'd rather go through the pain of being in that moment and absolutely going for it than wishing, hey, I wish I'd never got to it and lost. Like, I'd much rather go take the shot. And that's how I look at it. Say, if I'm willing to put it all on the line, knowing you could full well get your heart broke, that's the life of a competitor. Because I know on the other side of it, there's this really cool moment that you get to share together. So it's something that it was hard, but I also know it wasn't going to define me as a coach. And so time to get back to work. And so that's why that playoff win was meaningful for me after the Super Bowl.
Coach, you guys had such a prolific offense, and obviously Coach Shanahan calling it, and he's gone on to do really well, and offenses under him, always do well. And you got a big lead in that game, but and this is such like I feel like a novice even asking this question, because like I know that's like one of your things as a coach is you hire coaches and let them do their jobs, but when they're calling passing plays on that series, I know the series when Julio makes that toe tap catch on the sideline, and like, do you not just grab the headphone and say, run the ball 3 times and kick a field goal here?
Those are when you want to go through the lessons. That's what happened, because then there was a false start and another penalty that took place. So I went back to watch the game, from the lens of the opponent. It's okay. I'm on their team. Let me see what took place, what was next. So you're right that those are like referencing, all right, what are the lessons that you take, and now you apply them into your game now. And so through all the time in Atlanta and Dallas, for that matter, there's definitely things that we do now that came from something that happened in a game, in a moment, to say, okay, this happened, and this is how we're going to go play from here on. So it's just the learning of it, man. And so that's why I make that case to say you should do a look back. When something doesn't go right, like ask yourself why, and then put some processes in place to say this is how we want to do it moving forward.
I like the film breakdown, like you're the other coach, like you're playing for the other team. That's a cool idea.
Why could they? How could it go? What would it look like? What were the important things? Okay, that's a bold move. And so you want to put yourself into their shoes and then go from there.
Thanks for going there with us, Coach. I'm wondering if you could tell us about a moment that cracked your ego when you thought you had it figured out and life humbled you fast.
That's a long answer if we're going to find out when there's too many to hit on. But here's where I think it's a good one, because having people that are also there with you helps in this spot. Hey, man, look at that again. Have another viewpoint. Having other people to collaborate with definitely helps that. In the NFL, and Tim, you know this, like the humility, it can happen quickly. You think you're doing well, and all of a sudden, like, how did this team kick your ass? And going into it, you can feel overconfident, talk it, but not really put the work in to go prepare. And I would say getting your ass kicked in the NFL, man, you feel that difference. You feel the time. And it's a humbling one. I would say my last game at Dallas, we lost to the Packers at home in a wild card game. And think you have a good preparation, think your stuff's good, but man, you can be overconfident too, and it just permeates the whole thing. And so I would say that would be one in my last couple seasons that really sticks with you. And both of you know, like, sometimes you wish that the win stayed more with you, but oftentimes it's like the loss that sticks there and stays. You're like, yeah, all right, loss, go ahead and leave this conversation. But it does matter. And I think like gratitude helps, because it's hard to be like, use that ego when you have like a gratitude heart, so like it's hard to be that ego when you're also showing the humility to others. So if you're feeling a little boastful, it might be time to reconnect with the things that talk about gratitude, because I don't feel like you can like live the same way doing both of those.
Is there someone you've lost, a coach, a player, a mentor, whose voice still shows up in your mind when it gets quiet?
Yes. That's a great question. The When I first started coaching, I was in college, and it was in the 90s, and I coached at Hofstra in Long Island. And the coach's name was Joe Gardy. He's since passed, maybe 15, 20 years ago. The thing that I loved about Coach was, as a young coach, it was nice. And we were working. You coached your own position, and you failed. You did well, but you had to correct them. I think sometimes in coaching, you have to know how to fix your own problems. And so Coach Gardy gave us the space to solve those problems too. Not every young coach is going to have everything done just right. Like oftentimes you see that, no, I'll do it. I'll take care of it. So I love that he gave us space as young coaches to make our mistakes. And so the staff that we were all together, like I said, in those early 90s, Raheem Morris was on the staff. So he and I are, a few, not too far apart. Kyle Flood, who's the offensive coordinator at the University of Texas. Joe Woods is the DB coach at the Raiders. So it was a fun time because make mistakes, support each other, and then collaborate and share ideas. I think in coaching and probably in business and other things, people become so specialized, they forget to collaborate and find like the best parts of one another and share them. And Coach Gardy left us that space to like figure it out together, find solutions, make mistakes. And I find myself, if I'm trying to micromanage something, hey man, create some space, let these people solve some problems, and then come to me for help. And most people have a lot more in them than you think. They're willing to figure it out and find their way, as opposed to just giving them the solution right away. So like, we all got a lot more in us to figure it out. So give them the space to do that.
Having you, Coach Reem Morris, Coach Flood, all those guys in one spot, that seems like too much to be a coincidence. That guy must have been one hell of a coach.
And he had hired a lot of young guys to say, all right, man, like, we're going for it. And he had a philosophy, and like back when you were 25, you didn't know he had a philosophy. This was just what we were doing, but it was so impactful because like he gave you authority and chances to go do some things early. And I never forgot that. Like, I became a better coach because in the game things were happening. We weren't stopping this certain run. Like, all right, fix it right now. And it's one thing for any coach, and Tim will say this, like in the meeting room, the best of the best on the field with their eyes can see it and say, this is what we're going to change. This is what we're going to adjust. And it's like it's this irreplaceable like thing that you got to solve the best of the best on the sideline. Like there's a lot of people with the clicker in your hand or watching on TV, man, but like fixing it in real time, like there's a real skill that goes with that.
DQ, you are known for being a player's coach. What does that actually mean to you, and how do you earn that title every day?
Yeah, it's a funny title, isn't it? Players coach. Like, who else am I going to coach? Like the players. I think you want to, like a players coach. I'm hopeful that would mean somebody that cares about the man before the ball player. And I think if you do that, you're able to take the ball player further because you know what his why is. You know the purpose behind why they love competing, what it is so much, what they're playing this game for. And I also like seeing that there's a chance to make people better. And I would say maybe that's what I'd hope a player coach means or what it means about me. Like, hey, if you want to go get better at this thing, go see Dan. He can help you with that. And so that's what I would hope it means because we have high standards and we push them and we hold them to that. So it's not where you can look the other way. I think people can confuse that of being easier for that. I think you have to get the corrections and the accountability. You don't have to do it in a negative and hard way to like cuss somebody out or, make them feel less than, but you do have to get it corrected. And if you do that, you got high standards and I don't let them slip.
Is any of that from? I don't want to like take away credit from you because you're such an unbelievable coach, but you've also worked with so many great coaches. Like Pete Carroll was kind of the first, not the first, but maybe in the modern era, kind of the first players coach that really had a lot of success. And obviously, you were there with him having that success. And you mentioned earlier, kind of taking a piece from other coaches. Is that something you always had, or was that kind of Pete Carroll influenced?
I think I had it, and it allowed me to say, you can do it that way. Like, you don't have to do it in an old traditional way of this is how it has to be. And you can't be close with the player and make sure they get, all the things and show that much care about them. So I think it gave me an example, Troy, to say, okay, this could be different if you look at it differently. Doesn't mean you're not going to push them. It doesn't mean you're not going to like raise them to really high standards and play tough and aggressive and all the things that we love about playing. But it does mean you don't have to do it in some old-fashioned way. It can change and be different. So I think it allowed me access that it could look different and be more authentic to me, honestly.
You're praised for building great cultures, but have you ever built a culture that wasn't right, that you had to unlearn or unteach?
I think I've built it where, as the culture goes, you can't ever assume it's always going to be that way. So that's a standard that has to, and me being the one that's kind of the keeper of the standard or the culture, that you have to live it, Tim, on a regular basis because, you think it's good and then maybe you're a little off course one day and a little bit, maybe 1 degree, and then, 30 days or 60 days later, and how the hell did we get to here? And knowing that it might only been off a little bit at the start, and then you let that standard slip and the next one and the next one. So I think that's probably the one as a leader that I fear the most, to make sure identity, standards, the way we play, that always stays at the front of my thinking. And there's definitely days or a week where if I don't feel like I mention it, that I feel like it may be slipping. And so it's a constant reminder for me.
Coach, you mean you're known for culture building and all that, and you stepped into Washington, who really hasn't been that relevant in a long time, and immediately turning around and people talk about the culture. How do you turn around a franchise in 1 year? I mean, I know there's no secret sauce or everybody would be doing it, but what's like the 80-20 rule of it? Like what was the most important thing when you stepped into that job to get everybody on the same page and the right culture?
On a team, I think the players have to have like some responsibility about the culture. And so what we did was make our own like document. So think of like a Navy SEAL ethos or a Rangers creed. So we call it our commander standard. Amen. Like this is how we want to live together, behave together, communicate. And so when it comes from the locker room, now it's not just, me as the coach or the other assistants, giving a whole set of rules of this is how we, do it. But actually, some of that leadership has got to go back to the players or back to the, employees in the organization. Because if you're just relying on one voice or one idea, you got one single point of failure. So I like that there's a lot of leaders here, and I lean in hard on them to make sure that they're all upholding that standard to one another. And it doesn't always have to come from me. If it does, then they're not really that close.
I don't know if I have ever seen a coach have more fun on the field than you. I have a lot of memories at Falcons games, seeing you running around on the field, celebrating with the team. But that Hail Mary play last season to win the game against the Bears gave me goosebumps. You reminded us all about why we love the game. Was that the most fun you've ever had coaching?
It was, yes. I don't know about you. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been on the winning side of a Hail Mary? I have not. From high school ball, college ball, pro ball, I've been on the field where you've thrown them and they got knocked down or whatever. But to actually be on the winning end, like, that was crazy, man. So I think I blacked out for like 10 seconds, just like running around crazy. And then, like, all right, this really happened. So that was the one time, and I've coached for a long time. So, like, it was really cool.
We must have replayed, first of all, the Hail Mary, everyone watched 100 times. But then my dad, our family were watching, we kept replaying it, showing you sprinting around.
Felt like I was Jim Valvano in the NC State, the Wolfpack, after they beat like Houston in the final. He was just running around, like looking for somebody to hug. So I don't even remember like the preceding moments to that, just that he caught it. And then afterwards, just like, man, that was awesome. So that was definitely a highlight I'll never forget, because you don't have too many of those.
What a great memory. DQ, if today was your last day coaching, what part of you would feel complete and what part would feel unfinished?
Going into coaching, I love the feeling of making players better. So I would feel completed in that, knowing that we can take a player from one spot to the next spot. Maybe that was a big contract that they earned for their family and families. And the thing that I would feel incomplete about was if it ended today of winning a championship here with these people, this locker room, these coaches, this connection that we've begun. So I think that would leave me feeling some sort of way for sure. If there was a leaving of this city without delivering the big one, I would feel, man, that would hurt.
Do you think it would ever feel like enough though, coach? You think you're always like, if you won one, do you think you'd say, I really feel like I should have won two?
There's definitely a little bit of a drug that goes into that. Like winning at Seattle was awesome, and thinking like, all right, this is awesome. Like, and then it's like, but man, two would be even better than one. So there's definitely a feeling. I'm somebody that I do have gratitude for like the profession that I'm in. So knowing that there's many people that didn't have one, like I'm big, like appreciative of that. But for sure, I wasn't the head coach as, in the loss for Atlanta. I mean, I was the head coach. So it definitely weighs on you differently. And I really want to be able to help deliver that for others. Knowing like how much fun it was to go through, like I want to connect with some of these guys in that way for a lifetime, knowing for one season, like that's the cool thing about football. Like other industries don't have you were the best CEO in the country, like, but we do in football, like you're the best doctor or whatever it was. But like there is one time that like, hey man, nobody played football better than you guys this year. And so like, that's a cool feeling.
What's something that you've held on to for years? An old belief, a coaching habit, a way of thinking that you've finally had to let go of?
That one is actually an awesome question, because one of the cool parts about coaching is that it always does evolve. And so I think, like I'm in training camp now. And so when you were playing, Tim, there were 2-a-days or maybe even 3-a-days when you were in college where you were going. And so those days are different. And so some of the coaches would say, well, we don't have enough time, or we don't have enough, practices to develop this player to get them there. And the good news is we all 32 have the same amount of time. And so the old belief would be, well, it's going to take a rookie a long time to learn the system, and it's going to take a couple of years for him to develop. And so you've had to adjust your thinking to say, okay, how do we fast track that to get him to that place faster? And one of the keys to that is getting to know who the man is before the ball player. Because I think if you can get to that spot faster, you know his why, you know how he learns, you know what's the most important things to him. Maybe you fast track your relationship some to say, okay, these are the most important things that you're going to need to know for this system. And as coaches, I think you need to design systems that can allow players to play quickly, man. Like good defensive football, doesn't need complexity. You need to say, this is how we do it, and you go get them. And the same thing, the way you attack on offense. So maybe the playbooks aren't as big, but you have some adaptability built into them to say, okay, this is how we'll get there faster. So that's the belief. I think it's not about the playbook. Lots of people run cover three. It's about how you do it and the attitude and the effort that you play with. So that's taken me a while to learn, and I think it's more prevalent now because training camps are shorter, off seasons are shorter than when you were playing, and so you don't get the same amount of practices or reps in. So you better make them count, every single one of them.
You have to make every rep count. Coach, when you do step away from football, which I hope is a long ways away, what do you hope people say about Coach DQ?
I hope that they see me as somebody that helped get them better. And whether that's a coach that worked with me or a player that worked with me, that, that didn't apply just to football. I helped get them better in there, but maybe saw leadership in their own way, that on any team, there's going to be a lot of leaders that get developed, both off the field in their own lives and with their own families. And so I would say I'm hopeful that Dan would say, man, he made me a better leader, and that's carried over into my life, and he's helped get me better. That would make me as proud as anything, honestly, that I helped somebody take it to the next level about getting better.
What's one thing you've never said out loud, maybe even to yourself, about this profession or what it's cost you?
Being a head coach, I would say, is a lot more lonely than you would think. As an assistant, you're always talking to the other assistants. There's back and forth to go. And so you see the head coach in the media. You see him on the sidelines way often, way more. That's just the nature of how it goes. But there's a lot of times where you're trying to figure things out on your own, and knowing you got to do what's best and really hard decisions, whether that's releasing a player that maybe the other assistants don't want to do, knowing this is the best thing for the team. I think that's leading, making the hard decisions and the hard choices, knowing what's best for the whole group. So I think those decisions can sometimes be lonely, and you give up a lot of sacrifices to find balance in your life. I don't have it all the time, but when I am home, I try to have that balance there. So I'd say that's the sacrifice of it, Tim, knowing that as a head coach, there's more lonely times than you would think. And then just trying to find some balance. So, when you're there, you're not the coach at the house. You're a husband, or, a lot of coaches, a father. So those are really important separations to make. Even if it's not the same time with a regular job, knowing like the time you're there, man, like you make it count.
Coach, when you're making those hard decisions, like, whether it's like a draft on draft day or free agency, or, like signing a player, obviously there's some buzz around you guys signing players in free agency. I mean, ultimately, when it does fall on you, right, like your job is on the line. If you guys at the number 2 pick, obviously it worked out well so far, right? Knock on wood and everything. It seems like it's really worked out. If you miss on that pick, I mean, that could be your coaching career. Well, for this specific job, it could be over. What do you like? What are you doing in those decisions when, like you said, that the buck stops with you and there really isn't somebody for you? There's no assistant coach for you to go talk to about it. Like, what are you doing differently now that you're in that role?
I want to make sure that like I think of the locker room first. knowing that if that part is right, Troy, and you get the right people on the bus, then maybe you put them into different seats and different locations, but you have to have that part right first. And so at the very top of the pile, to me, that's like the number one job, to make sure the right people are here on the bus. Once everybody's in the bloodstream, like this is all part of it. So I think of the locker room, the other teammates first. I want to know, the type of leader, the type of teammate they could be here. And if we get that part right, I can live with almost any result. It's the ones, if you make the mistake where they could cost the team a lack of discipline, a lack of, or like selfishness, those are ones that are hard to overcome. And when you pick somebody high, they're going to be on the program for a while. And so you want to make sure each of the guys have, the right attributes to bring to the club.
Culture fits are something that fans at home never think about when they want their team to bring players in. DQ, is there a moment on the sideline, one no one else noticed, that you think about often? A glance, a hug, a sentence, something small but unforgettable?
On the sideline, the unforgettable words, most of them are in the really cool moments. And you would understand this, like life in the alley, like coming out of the tunnel and you're all doing it together. So like, I got your back. I love you, brother. Like those are ones when you're like so connected to people. It's as fun as it gets. But in the moment, it's pure like elation and joy when you see the other players making plays. You know how hard they work to get to that spot, to make the sack, to get the catch, to make the throw. Like, that's a big deal.
Coach, going back quickly to Jayden Daniels, one of the things that I've seen, and I don't know if you would agree with me or disagree with me, but I think quarterbacks so often get kind of thrown to the wolves, especially with the high picks. You go in and you have somebody like, say like Joey Harrington, was just unbelievably talented in college, and then goes in and kind of almost gets shell shocked. Where, were you guys ever thinking about kind of having somebody come in and having Jayden learn for a year and adjust to the speed, or did you know you were going to play him right away?
We didn't know that. So we had signed Marcus Mariota before we drafted him, Troy. But going into it, saying we are going to draft a quarterback, but it is going to be a competition for that. And so we wanted to make that part clear for anybody that was coming in, to say, like, there aren't going to be any sacred, cows to say, okay, you're already starter, you're already doing that. I got like some great advice from Jimmy Johnson, the old Cowboys and Dolphins coach. So when he had told Troy early on, he said, man, like, be a great teammate and like work on playing great quarterback. I'll take care of all the leading of getting on somebody and doing that. So when he was first coming up, man, like, he could just focus on Troy being a great teammate and like playing quarterback great, not having all the extra media, all the leadership, all be the face of the franchise. So I did want that for Jayden in his first year, knowing that we were going to put a really good support system around him and then allow his natural development and talent to happen. And so we were pretty intentional about that, of surrounding him with coaches and players, like a tight end that's friendly and Jack Ertz, to make sure that connection would happen. And so that's still an ongoing process. We believe in Jayden so much that we want to support him as best we can. So I think when you're going into something like that, you better have a good support system in place to like make sure you're there when he's going to struggle, which is going to happen, but also to help, around him for the success too.
And if you guys had, even if he was the best quarterback on your team last year, if you didn't have the supporting cast, would you still have played him if he was the best, or did he have to be the best and you have to have the right pieces around him? Like, if in another scenario, if you were, coaching somewhere else and you draft a good quarterback, but they don't have maybe an offensive line or a friendly tight end or a good running game, do you think teams should protect the quarterback a little more, or no?
I think he really has to demonstrate that he can really run the system, Troy. So in any game, there's a lot of ways to go win it. It might not be throwing it, it might have to go run it, but you do have to have a system in place. And if picking from here this week, picking from there, then you never really get into like a rhythm of what that's going to be. So as long as that player can really execute the system, doesn't mean he has to drop back and throw it 50 times a game, but it does mean that he's got to be able to do the right checks and put it, the offense into the right plays. If he doesn't have that, then I would recommend that you don't do that because you could actually set him back. But surrounding him is important with the right cast and the right system, and making sure like this is what you think as a coach, how much offense you want to put in. But the most important barometer is like, what does the player be able to handle? Sometimes as coaches, we have a playbook this big, but like we don't have to use all of it. This is really what the player does well. And the best of the best, find the unique traits of the player and then feature that as often as you can. And if you do that and don't just try to force them into one system only, I think you'll have more success, Troy. And that way, allow his natural, like if it's a running quarterback, and like he should run. And if it's somebody that's a pocket passer and these are the 10 routes that he can do better than anything, man, you really have to feature those 10 routes. So we asked Jayden when he came here what was the concepts that he loved from LSU, and we put those in early to make sure he had comfortability with some calls so he would have success right away too.
It's so interesting because everyone knows it's the most important position now in the NFL, and people miss on it so often. I was thinking about, your career, at least your last kind of few places. You had Seattle with Russell Wilson, a franchise quarterback. You're in Atlanta with Matt Ryan, franchise quarterback, and then you're in Dallas. You got Dak Prescott, franchise quarterback. Is
Right.
there things that you saw on your journey that made you more confident when drafting Jayden, does it not carry over like that?
No, it's funny you brought that up because going into it, knowing that we were going to select someone, I'm really fortunate with the general manager, Adam. And so Jayden was actually the very first player that we watched on film together. I got the job, and that night we were sitting in his office, and he had put tape on him. We watched the tape of LSU against Florida, and they said, "Let me show you a tape." And it was from Jayden, a freshman at Arizona State, playing against Oregon. So like, talk about like the work that had went into a player. He was showing tape from his freshman year about the competitor. It was never too big of a moment. And I thought, man, I went home to Stacy that night and I said, we got one at general manager. And I was like really happy when I went home that night saying, man, like this guy is on it. And that feeling of knowing that he was really prepared for that moment for us. I had no experience of being involved in selecting a quarterback in the first round overall. So it was actually a super fun experience to go through to work out him and Caleb Williams and J.J. McCarthy and Drake May and getting to know them. But you referenced it earlier in the show about how important those decisions are and why you take all the time you need to get it right.
This is the last thing about the draft, and I'll move on. I could nerd out about this all day, but if you guys didn't, and I don't know if you can say this, but if you can, if you didn't take Jayden at second overall, did you have a player,
We
especially
would we would have taken him if we were picking first overall.
if say he wasn't there, say you guys had your quarterback already, was there a player? I'm thinking with you, you're such a defensive guy. Was there somebody you saw and man, I wish we had two picks in the top?
There were other options, but once we got locked in what we knew Chicago was doing, then it became pretty evident where we were going. But we were, like if something weird happened, we were ready to pivot. But I will not divulge that info. I'm taking it to the grave. Okay. I'm not having that one come back in another interview at another time.
Coach, you've been subjected to the vagaries of coaching in the NFL. It's the proverbial roller coaster, and with every drop, I'm guessing, comes doubt, regret, and depression. I know that you are a Christian. Has your faith alleviated those feelings because of your belief that God has a plan for your life? I ask because obviously I have had a setback of epic proportions, and my faith in Jesus Christ has been my salvation.
100%. And I think of you often on that, like your mental strength and like having faith, but having that to lean on, it is big. And yeah, I grew up Catholic. I still am, and so before games, there's a Catholic service and a chapel that we go to, and I go to both. And the reason I do that is I like hearing like the word or inspiration from different areas of faith. And at chapel, it's more music and more celebration. Where like Catholic mass is very, regimented, disciplined, stand up, sit down, you know. But it's also I love the repetition and discipline of that. Like it's not, I think how does the saying go? Um, Repetition doesn't spoil the prayer. Like sometimes having faith on things can really bring it to you. But yes, I do lean in hard on my faith, and it's absolutely helped me in this career. And knowing that, like I have that helps me a lot.
That's great to hear. DQ, you've been celebrated, doubted, hired, and fired. Throughout all that, what's your relationship been with your own self-worth? And what advice would you give others on how to stay so upbeat?
I definitely like live in a positive outlook. I like living my life that way. I see the glass half full. I would say I'm not Pollyanna, where like when mistakes are there, I don't recognize them to go. But I also want to pass along, like in this profession, like you can work really hard, but like enjoy the hell out of it too. And I think I've had more fullness in life knowing that we do put a lot in. Hours are crazy. The lifestyle is unusual in terms of the work ethic to do it. But I also really enjoy it together. So um, I want to make sure I'm like fully present with the people that I'm with. And that helps a lot with the ups and the downs, knowing that you're going to spend a lot of time together. More than half our working lives are together. So I really want to enjoy that connection with everybody and not miss that. So I've looked ahead too many times about what's next. So I try to stay grounded to say, this is the group that we're with and how we're going to do it. And like, really enjoy that and them doing that together. So I want us to have a healthy, tight staff, and you have to work hard at that. But that's my advice for them, man. Like, there's going to be ups and downs, and most people who are at either playing at this level or coaching at this level, like, there's a level of resilience. They've had to go through things and fight through them, and so I'd rather talk about the tools to use than how to get through those moments when it does get hard, because it's going to happen.
Is that something that you've developed as a coach, or did you have that, you think, early on?
I definitely didn't. I think developing, like, if you're going to work or play in this profession, like, you're going to have, like adversity hit. And so what are those tools to say, hey, get back up, don't place the blame. What do you want to do differently? What do you want to do better? And I think if you can constantly learn from the losses, like if you take a L, like you hope there's something to learn in it. And I try to make sure I do that where I don't just live in with the loss, but I definitely had to learn it for sure. And it's hard. And I think it's especially hard for some of the players coming out of college that were achieved at such a high level. Like, they haven't failed a lot. And like in the first year or two in the NFL, like it's 100% going to happen where it's not going to go so good. And so like helping them through that process, I think that's an important part of being a good coach, is like they're going to struggle. Like, it is the NFL. They're the best players in the world. Like, they're not going to look good sometimes. And you have to fight and get them through it.
And when your team is facing adversity, like on the field, mid game, or maybe it's practice, whatever, obviously you're really good at kind of rallying the troops, one of the things you're known for. But having a guy like, Bobby Wagner, or having that kind of leadership you've always had on defense on your teams, how much do you like lean on the players for that too?
I do. And I don't necessarily call on them on the moment, Troy, but when you have players who have really high standards, those are kind of the times when they stand a little taller and, lead a little bit more, because they know when it gets quiet, it's their turn to really step into that space. when it's going great and there's a lot of high fives, like there's not a lot of leading that they have to do into that space. A guy like Wagner, he's got to, keep gas on the fire, so to speak. But when it gets the toughest or the most difficult, people then are naturally looking and knowing that that's their time to step into that space, whether it's myself as the leader or one of the top leaders on the team. Doesn't have to be your best player. That's not always the case where your best player is your best leader, but it's that person that has such consistency about them that when it gets hard, that's usually who people look to because they've been in the fights, they've been in there before, like, we're going to be fine. This is what we're going to do, and have answers for when those problems come up.
I think like as a former player and like it's very obvious how a player earns that respect and credibility. But how do you as a coach, again, this kind of goes maybe back to what I said earlier, but when you come in places like instantly you get that respect, you get that credibility. Is there, what are you doing that you think earned from all pro players? And, it's not like it's, if you were to go from an NFL coach to coach like college, they'd be like, oh, this guy really knows what he's doing. But you're going to places that these are all pros, these are all the best of their profession. How do you think a coach, new head coach or exists, like, how do you think you get that?
I think you first want to show belief in the player. Like when you're taking over a program that's having a hard time, or usually you're getting these jobs because it's not everything going great. So you want to make sure that you're giving them, the tools and the vision of why it's going to change here. And they want to play to win. And so they want to be a part of that, but you have to show belief in them and how we're going to go do that. So laying out that plan, that's a really big deal. Systematically for the team, but also for them individually. And to say, this is the vision of what we think you can bring here, and we're hoping you're going to work your ass off to go do that. And these are the ways that we're going to help you. And if they follow along that plan, then you start building connection, and you keep giving them that belief. And then before you know it, there's a number of people who have it. And then this kind of energy can take off together. And that's really when it comes to life, when it's not one or two or three guys, but like a crew of people that are really ready to get down for one another.
At the end of each podcast, I like to ask our guests to brag about their family. Everyone in football knows you're only as good as your team. So, Coach, please brag about your true home team.
That is the best question. Man, am I fortunate because my team is my wife, Stacy. And so, like, she is my absolute ride or die. And so we just had our 30th anniversary, and we went to college together in Salisbury. And so I actually was invited to do the commencement speech this year, and we had a good time doing that. And they awarded Stacy and I both with doctorate degrees. So I've heard neither of you call me doctor yet, by the way. So I think that alone is uncalled for. But what made me so happy, Tim, was seeing Stacy. Like, she was the one that was the academia in our, family. So to see them reward her, man, that made me happy. But I've had such unbelievable support from her of 14 moves, across the country from college to the NFL. When I remember first coaching at VMI, back then you had to take the tapes to the airport. Like, they didn't just send them on video, and then you bring them to the airport, and the airport would send it to the next city that you were going to play. I remember being from VMI and driving an hour down to, like, Roanoke, Virginia, to send our tape to Charleston to the Citadel. And so, like, who's getting in the car with me at, like, 5 in the morning? Like, so I didn't, had somebody to talk to who wouldn't fall asleep, was her. And so that's one of the oldest examples of somebody that's just, like, all in for you. So I constantly feel her support, and she travels to games, and it's really cool to have that.
Now on to our final word segment, where we ask our guests a few rapid fire questions. What was the happiest moment in your life?
I would say winning a Super Bowl in Seattle on the field with Stacy after the game.
What is the biggest adversity you've faced?
Losing a Super Bowl as a head coach.
What are you most excited about?
Like, possibility, like what could become here.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Don't compare. like, this person has this job at this age and this thing, like, man, like try not to compare, like run your own race, do your own thing. I think so often we all get caught up in that. So I'd say like avoid the comparison, man. Like I get it. It happens in professions, but try to avoid that as much as you can. Like you're the only one that's you. So like stay true to that.
This is one you two English majors can nerd out on a little bit. Do you have any book recommendations for us or for the listeners?
I just got done reading Inner Excellence, and I really liked it. So that would be one that I read recently within the last few days.
I'm going to order it after.
I love reading. So yeah, I and Stacy does too. But that was one that I really enjoyed reading, and took some ideas, shared them with some of the team, and so yeah, that's one that I like a lot.
The name of our podcast is Nothing Left Unsaid. Do you have anything you want to say?
What I'd like to say is, one, I'm honored to be on with you guys, and knowing there's a connection with football, but also as friends. And football has opened like so many doors in my life, and I've got to meet incredible people. So you guys are like living testimony to that. So I've got so much regard and respect for the NFL, and so to get a chance to meet Tim and be around you and know what you stand for, man, like I'm super honored and very grateful for our friendship.
Coach, last question here before we let you go. At the end of each podcast, we ask our guests, whoever we have on, who are a couple people that you know personally you think we should try to have on next as a guest?
I think you should go into the NBA a little bit. And I think there's some good guys for you to visit with, from whether it was in Miami with Spo or in Golden State with Kerr. Or I just think there's some interesting coaches that would really, share some insights that would help get people better. And but I would say the NBA has some unique guys. They're awesome at developing players. They've been at it better even than we have in the NFL. So I think that would be really interesting to visit with some.
I'm going to sneak one more in, Dad. Let me sneak one more question. It's the real last question, Coach. If the Washington Commanders win the Super Bowl this year, what happened? What had to click for you guys for that to happen?
I would say the connection of the team had to be so rock solid that any adversity that came up, they were able to deal with it, and that type of connection, like they weren't going to let one another down.
Awesome.
I hope you're playing that one back in February.
That's how I said it. Calling a shot.
I like it. Well said.
DQ, your friendship to me holds a special place in my heart. You are one of the most genuine, good people in a tough, tough business. I loved getting to know you in Atlanta and will be rooting for you against every team but one. Good luck heading into this season, and I hope God continues to bless you and your family.
I appreciate that, my brother.
Thanks, Coach. We'll do the follow-up after the season.
Right on. I'm down with that.